That's the right one. So, hey, I'll turn you off on the phone now, Travis.
That's fine. Thank you.
Can we hear him there, Brian, before I turn him off?
Yeah,
Let's see.
You scared the chairman.
you got him.
Don't look at me, bro.
Dude, I came, it started raining and I left. I came just the way
Okay,
it was.
okay, turn your volume on there, Travis. I put the phone off.
Hold on a minute here. What have I got? Hold on a minute, Noah. Wait a minute. Hold on. Son. I don't think I have audio here. Hold on a second.
We can see you.
We got your audio.
Okay, now I do. I had it muted.
Well, don't mute us. That'd be one-way communication there, Travis.
Yeah. Hold on just 1 second.
I hope your phone's charged. Hopefully this meeting will not go extensively long, but you never know.
There's no need in it. I honestly don't know why we just.
Your laptop.
68 and a half.
Let me grab that real quick. All right.
That's the
Can
only
y'all
copy.
hear? Can y'all hear
That's
me
the only
okay?
copy that's not been released on that 68 and a half yet. It's the bottom line on the last page. Mr. Chairman, it is 6:31. And I didn't, wait a minute, I need to run back and get a motion sheet. I didn't get any motion sheets.
We only have one of them.
You think one motion sheet we needed? Be right back.
Anybody else check in? You want to send a quick message to Nathan and Brian?
Yes, sir. I'll just send it to everybody. How's that?
I don't care.
Well, shoot.
Okay, everybody should get that.
You realize unless we're unanimous, we have nothing to send.
Say again, sir?
If we're not unanimous, we have nothing to send.
I know. Give me a call, Brian.
Call Brian, call Nathan, call everybody.
I just sent him a text.
All right, let's get started. I'll see who's here.
Okay, roll call for the recess meeting of 05/12/2020. Roll call. Mr. Daniel,
Here.
Mr. Elrod, Mr. Sanders,
Here.
Mr. Turney,
Here.
Chairman Fan.
Here.
Chairman Fan, you have 4 present, 1 absent.
All right, guys, we got one item on the agenda, and that's to send the commission a budget. Lordy. What Douglas just brought me looks catastrophic. This is a budget with no cuts, educational wise. That's gonna leave us with $241,181 estimated ending balance in reserve as of June 30th of 2021. That's at 75 cents. I honestly feel like they're going to give us 68.5. I think we're tap dancing here. But I'm open for suggestions. Go ahead, anybody can have the floor.
You want me to say something, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Douglas and I spent considerable time today and previously on looking at cuts. He had already looked at cuts over here on the right-hand side, and we suggested even more cuts. And looking at every travel option, everything with communication or travel or equipment. Douglas might want to talk on that just for a minute, that we looked at that. And we looked at that in depth, not just a precursory thing. We looked at it in depth and looked at every line item, going through those things that were, that we could cut, we cut. This does not include the new bus that was normally scheduled for FY21. We had appropriated $90,000 for a new bus. This is not in this budget. And we're hoping stimulus money will help us to recoup that. Lisa may want to talk on that for a moment, but Douglas, you might want to say just a few words in regard to your work on this as well as ours. So go ahead, Douglas. You got to unmute him there, Mr. Kafur.
We just went back and put the teachers back on the scale that we have now, and that shows in the budget. And then, of course, the retirement, Social Security, and Medicare recalculated when we did that. And then Mr. Curtis just went through and suggested some cuts that we did and some equipment items. And the bus, of course, is the biggest chunk. But as you can see, I don't know how much more you can move out of your committed or designated reserves. I know you can't move the career ladder reserve. I don't know exactly how much that is into regular reserve. We moved some, that we're fixing to move some this current year. So I'll do whatever you tell me.
Well, you've got Douglas up. Does anybody have any questions about this budget right here? This is the latest one he sent in. It's still warm when I got it.
It was emailed to the board right before I brought it to you.
Ending of this year, we'll have $1,605,950. I know there's some guesstimation in that too, isn't there, Douglas?
Well, that's just where I projected year-end fund balance with our projected expenditures. So that made it look better than it did, but on the original budget for this year. But I don't know what to tell you.
Well, it's next year's. That's the problem. There's
no magic course, no magic potion.
David, you say 605 or 705? Make sure I'm looking at the right thing here.
$1,605,950. Now the estimated ending budget, that's at that's our current 68.5
Okay.
ending this year. At 75 cents of the tax rate next year, everything staying the way it is right now, we're going to end up with $241,181.
Okay. I
And
got you.
that will not be state approved.
I got you. Okay.
I'm thinking we're going to have to end up with around 700,000 plus, bare minimum, just to get state approval.
Well, we do know that 3% is what what you got to have in reserves for just anything
Yeah, but I don't
that occurs.
think any of us want to just have the absolute bare minimum.
They may yell bare minimum across the way, but we do not.
That's a mistake and a tragedy in itself.
Now, none of this figures the COVID money that we're going to receive, but there'll be federal funds restricted there too. None of this has that in it at all about any of the COVID-19 stimulus funds. We've asked for a bus, the 90,000 to come out of those stimulus monies, as well as an additional 30,000 to buy a new bus with the funds that we've received for the rec bus. So we would like to continue that on, and hopefully that funding could come from that direction. Ms. Mullins and I talked just before the meeting, and we looked at some things there. Kathy and I did about the timeline, but that timeline on that, as y'all heard last night, will not be until later, until probably after July 1. So that's the COVID money is coming. The stimulus money, I don't know what the commission's going to decide on that. On the commission funding, we've looked at, we have suggested certainly doing everything the fire marshal is asked to do on this particular building. Some things that need to be done on the building, and the county executive looked favorably at that. But that money will, utilizing that, and then for the two buses, is what we've requested on our wish list. But you got, several other wish lists in the county on that approximately $600 and some odd thousand that Cannon County will receive for that. So I don't look for help in any way except for the bus and this building on that. So that's where we're at. Additionally, in this budget, you can look there on regard to Douglas's salary. We projected, and Douglas, well, you want to talk on this? We have projected into Douglas's salary that we would approximately, what was it, Douglas, $25,000 in that line item?
We put about half in there. May not use all that much because we don't know exactly when we'll go. And also under the data, think of the name of it. Let's see.
Just the line items there, Douglas, would be
It's
good.
72510-317. That should go down more than what I've got projected in there. But I don't know how that's going to look. I've talked to local government. They bill ahead, so we've always paid our support in advance. And I said, well, I know if we pay it all, we're not going to use it all, because we were into the finance office, and then they would have already paid their support. And they said, well, we'll give you credit. I said, well, we don't need credit. The very least that I would think would be we're going to have two people at the board to have view access to local government. And I don't know what that would cost, if anything. I just don't know. And so I still haven't, of course, they haven't billed us yet, but I still don't know how that can be worked. I can't get a good, clear answer from them, because I don't want to wind up with a credit from them that we can't, get cash back in. I don't want to do that.
Right, but that's on page 5 of 8 under fiscal services. Accountants, bookkeepers, you see it went from a budgeted amount of 50,000 over to 25, and that was basically half of Douglas's salary. because he's going to stay with us. He will continue to stay with us for a little while before the move to the financial management office. And then the same thing, you see the 35,710, that's Darlene going down to approximately $18,000 there. That in next year's budget, you know, that may or may not be that much used. We don't know when the exact move's going to be. We've suggested minimum of October 1, because we want to get the September budget, the September payroll done and complete, and then everything done for the rest of the you know, of this fiscal year. And we think to have things come in all the way through probably what, Douglas, August, before you get that pretty well done.
We usually close the end of July, but I have talked to Diane and told her I would like to stay through the start of school and getting contracts done and final salaries figured, you know, and all that. Because you're probably gonna have to hire a person to come in and do some of that. And so they'll need to watch. So we just don't know what that's gonna look like. But anyway, that's what we've got in the budget.
And there's nothing in the budget, if we do have to hire an additional person in this office, there's nothing in the budget in regarding that at all, correct?
That's right.
Mr. Curtis, where'd you say that Darlene's line item was for her?
Look on page 5 of the newest budget.
Okay,
Page
I'm there.
5, if you'll go down to 72510, fiscal services toward the bottom of the page.
Yeah,
You
I'm
look
there.
at line 161, secretary.
Gotcha.
If you look at that, you can see 35,710 is $18,000. So
Gotcha. Okay,
it
I'm
goes
there.
down.
There.
So
I think
I
it's
guess I
$100.
could utilize, what I could utilize, if y'all go in October, we're not going to utilize $25,000. So whatever is left there could be utilized either in both of those for that person that I would hire to assist in the financial management part down here. Is that right,
Gotcha.
Douglas?
That's right.
Okay.
Of course, you've cut it capital outlay some. I guess you could cut it some more, but you sure can't cut it out because we have things that come along during the year that we don't even know about, can't plan for. That has to be used for.
What do we got in the capital outlay? What number is that? I'm on an iPad. I can't keep up right here.
761000707.
It's always toward the end, 76,000, 76000. Line 301, 76301, architects at 20,000. And then you've got building improvements there of 300. I moved that down from what it was, 330,000 for a total of 350. We moved that down to even 300. And so now you've got 320 architects. And one thing you've got there, you have to remember too, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you've got and I talked with the roofing consultant today, as well as an insurance roofing consultant also today. If there's enough funding left over from the roof project, if we're even close to the west side, that money is still there to be used for roofs. And the some commissioners already told me that they would be glad whatever money we've got left over, if we've got enough to roof west side, then we go ahead and roof west side. So that was mentioned, you know, by them. So hopefully that's good news. If we depend on whatever cost estimates that we've got left over, then we will do that.
Hey, Mr. Curtis, say that again, because I was under the impression that we were going to have to give that back to them, and they finally approved it.
Mr. Sanders, the motion was to do such as that. But when
Okay.
we do that, the commission is going to, the commissioners two commissioners have already approached me about that they're curious about how much we're going to have, if we have anything a bit left over. If there's enough there to do West Side, there'll be a move from the county commission not to just give that money back and put that back into debt service or whatever, but to go ahead and roof West Side. So they approached me on that. I did not approach them on that. They approached me.
But you said that was two of the commissioners that had approached you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It probably won't be enough to do the roof, but there might be enough for CBO or.
I think there'll be enough to do KE, but we'll see.
Well, that would be it.
That would be a plus if we can get that done.
I want to turn it into them and they put it back in their court because I told them I would.
That would have to be an amendment.
And then two, Nathan, or excuse me, Mr. Sanders, two, one of the things, if the train grant goes through, then there will be money on the insulation at the high school that'll be on the train grant. Money on insulation at the high school that will literally be on the train grant that could also be fueled back in to do a West Side. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing what those numbers come out at, so we can see how much we've got left over. And then if the train grant were to pass the commission, then you would turn right around and utilize the installation, and the installing of the insulation can be used on the train grant. So the insulation is going to be put on there nonetheless, whether we do it through roofing or whether we do it through train. The financial part of that is if the commission passes the train, the EESI project, then if they do that, then we can utilize that savings and then turn that and put that on the roof at West Side. Now, some commissioners might be against that, but so be it. But I'm just saying that that's one additional area of savings that we will have, which that won't help this budget at all because it's all been spent out anyway on the 1.171 million for the for the roof project.
That's why it's exactly.
Okay. So
I hope I answered the question, Mr. Sanders.
yeah, you did. It sounds like a lot of that is still unknown. I mean, it's encouraging to hear that two of the commissioners came to you, but kind of like I said the other night, we still have so many unknowns, and that just adds to it. So, but yes, you did answer, and I appreciate that. I want to jump back to something else a while ago. If I'm looking at this right, and if I heard you, or maybe it was Douglas, this budget does not have the money in there for a bus. Is that the way I'm looking at it?
That is correct. You are correct, Mr. Sanders.
Look at 72710. Let's see. 729. You see a zero there.
Okay. Help me. This makes me nervous because I go back to, and again, y'all know I'm a conservative one and not want to spend anything, but I remember them talking about the year they had to buy 4 buses, and that absolutely killed their budget. We've got issues, we know, with some buses, and it scares me that if we take it out, it will not get put back in.
Well, you'll have to put it in, Mr. Sanders. You'll have to put it in if these buses come back due. We might ask Ms. Black to chime in here on the buses that are coming due and when they're coming due. So I think that might gather into your question too, Mr. Sanders.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, it was my understanding that we were going to ask to do 2 this year so that next year we could take that one out. Then the following year we would put it back in.
But how many buses do you got coming up in the next couple of years, Ms. Black?
We've got to get through that 4 hump, those 2004s, and once we get through those, we'll be back to just 1 a year. But that year they bought 4 is going to.
Is that not this budget we're working on, Lisa? Sorry, Ms. Black. Like between 2020 and 21 school year.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we can get 2 this year. We'll be okay for next year. I think we'll make it. But we can't keep taking them out or it'll catch us.
Well,
When does that
and
4
that's
due? When
what
do those 2004 buses due? That's my question.
They started in 2020. We're already paying extended utilization on them, so they're already jumped over into that other time. So we had inspections today, and 0201 is our first one on there, and we're bumping on miles with it. They're gonna let us try it in August to see if it's gonna make it. That'll be our first one, and it'll go.
Okay, so Lisa, there again is another unknown. And let me say this first. I think we're just going to do something tonight to make the commission happy, and then we got to get into nuts and bolts and start slashing. But while we're here, so you just brought up another unknown. So let's say we don't put this in there, and they tell you in August that you cannot put that bus on the road.
If we buy 2 this year, though, Nathan, I'll be okay. But if we don't, we went down a bus when I wrecked that bus. So that put us one behind.
Right.
So then we've got one coming this year. But we got $67,000 out of that settlement. They gave us $67,000. Plus there was 90 in this year's budget to cover another one. So that's still in there, right, Mr. Curtis?
That's correct. Correct, Douglas?
So
Douglas, unmute Douglas there, Brian, please.
It's there. It's there. If you buy a bus, so you're going to have to put some more money with it.
Right, if we buy 2.
This year. If you don't buy it this year, that money will go to your fund balance.
And that's what we were trying to do with the stimulus funding. That's why we requested $120,000, $30,000 to complete from where that bus was wrecked, was totaled. That $30,000 will get us up to the $90,000 that we can buy a new one. Plus, if the commission, if they would give us some of that money to put on a bus for this year, we can carry that over then into next year is what I was anticipating.
When will we know that?
We don't know that. I don't know that. I don't think there's any estimation on that. Although the governor has said those funds will be available to counties before this fiscal year ends.
The comptroller's office has called and told account numbers to use to account for it, but they had no idea what strings would be attached to it. They had no idea how much it would be. They just told us how to account for it. That's all I know about it.
Douglas, was that on the education side or on the county side? Did they specify that when you talked to the county?
But she gave me some account numbers, so I'm assuming that some's going to come through GP and some will come through federal. And that's the indication I got from her. But she didn't act like she knew too much about it. So,
well, they don't know. Eve Carney, Mary Ann Dursky's college, certainly. Eve Carney has talked about that on the commissioner's broadcast. And on the education side, we think we're going to get it somewhere around the last part of June. Maybe this fiscal year, probably into the next. But and that we can spend it up through March the 13th. And we've got till 2022 to spend it, actually. So we'll look at that from the education side. On the county side, I've not heard anything on that. Now, maybe they'll know something tonight with the budget committee or whatever. But the county executive Bush did not. When I talked to him last week, there was no indication about that. So, that would help us tremendously if they would, $90,000 on that bus that we've got put in for next year, and then the 30, that would get us then 2 additional buses. Correct, Ms. Black?
That is correct.
And that would be phenomenal if we could get that done.
We could coast for a little while.
Yeah, we could coast on buses there for, that would put us to that. Nathan, to answer your question, if that occurs, we'll already have 2 that next year we could probably look at, not putting the bus in there, but that's got to occur. So you're exactly right, Nathan, on that. It's some unknowns.
If's the biggest word in English language. No,
Hey,
Bruce.
Nathan's muted there. I think he was trying
Sorry,
to.
I did that myself. Sorry. I'm gonna direct this to you, Mr. Curtis, and Lisa. I'll go with your recommendation. I'll be honest, it scares me to take that bus out of there. But Lisa, what's your recommendation?
I think it
Or Mr.
depends on that money. I think it depends on if we get that money, whether we can do that.
Well, and that's basing it on an unknown. And
But you know, the other thing, Nathan, is we don't ever abide until the end of the year anyway.
Right.
So, I mean,
And-
I don't know how many years Douglas and I have said, he'll say, you're spending your bus money, you're spending your bus money.
Exactly. And that's actually where I was going to go and say that is that, you don't buy it in the end of the year. That way,
I usually run backwards when he starts saying that.
yeah, for me, and this is just being kind of what Douglas said, we don't know what strings are going to be attached to this money. We don't know if, I'll be honest, guys, and I don't know if there's commissioners join us or not. We don't know what the commissioners are going to do if they understand that education has to get part of that. I would guess they're going to do bare minimum unless it completely specifically says you must give $90,000 for a bus. They may not do that. I mean, that's just the cold hard facts.
Mr. Curtis,
Right.
were they positive about that? Did they seem
We're
receptive?
hoping the commissioners that approached me about that, one of the bank commissioners that approached me about that, stated the 30,000 they said they could probably do. So the one that was wrecked, we can, instead of buying a used bus, we'll buy a new bus to replace that one. And so the 30,000 I think is pretty solid. The other is the 90,000. And, a lot of people have their hand out right now in the county in regarding, wanting some of that $600,000 the county's going to receive. And two, the other unknown to everybody listening, the other unknown is we believe that the governor is going to give us even more in the counties, that the governor is going to, because of COVID-19, is going to give us even more operational, but we don't have any guarantees of that, but everybody said kind of keep your breath, hold your breath, because you may have more coming. So we'll see. But if we could get that in this building fixed for, with the $30,000 and that'll help us on that other bus, plus get the building fixed and we can breathe here, at 301 West Main Street for a little bit in regarding the building itself. And I've been, the chairman will tell you, I've been working hand in hand with the county executive on trying to get this building knocked out and done, get the fire marshal off her back, so we can say we've done our part, by the way, on that part. The board has done our part. In fact, probably more, but we've done our part. But we shall see on that one. And we don't know when that's coming, whether it be in this fiscal year or not. But if it's not in this fiscal year, we can retro that, at least on our end, on the education side. We think we're going to get $371,000. How we spend that is yet to be determined. We're still looking at that at the district level with our district leadership team about what we can do with that with those funds. But that'll be one-time money. It will not be recurring, and it'll be a one-time deal. At least that's what we think today. That's
So
not changed tomorrow.
So their stipulations are like ours. It can't be reoccurring debt. It has to be something new. So
you could then, in theory, utilize the $30,000 out of that $371,000. I think that they would say that would be an allowable expense as the COVID-19 to help with the COVID-19. Just like if we had to put more in food service or wherever we needed it because our expenditures are more. Bonnie can talk a little bit more about that. Because our expenditures are more, then that's where those funds can be utilized. So,
Hey, I have a quick question, if I could. Is Miss Mullins with us?
I'm not, is Kathy
Okay.
on here? I don't think she is, but I can probably call her and get her here.
No, it's okay. Again, may not know. I was just thinking, with this being federal money, is that not going to fall under her and Darlene?
It is, but they are giving a lot of allowances on that funding. They are going to be, I don't think are as rigid as they normally are, Mr. Sanders, on that because of COVID-19. Everybody's having to spend money on things that aren't included, in a normal budget, on a normal budget year. So they are being very flexible. At least every call I've been on with the commissioner says that money is going to be very flexible in regard to what we can use it for. In fact, we may even can use it on food service, on some of if we've gone over on anything on food service. But we're getting a great participation, and Jennifer might can talk on that, on her sources, even on that. We're getting good participation. So I think food service, this is just GP. We've not talked about, food service or anything like that in their budget, but Jennifer is doing very well on the participation rate. So, Marcia, have you heard anything more on your side, or I may open it up for her and Bonnie? Have you heard anything more about the flexibility with that money
I
coming
haven't.
down?
I keep checking those toolkits online on that COVID site, and I checked them this afternoon and did not see anything updates. And while you mentioned it, I thought, well, let me just Google and see if anything has popped up. But I know Kathy's got a series of some meetings, some Zoom meetings that are coming up to give some clarification on those. I know, like you said, some of the schools are spending it or looking at spending them, plus being prepared if we have to do this again in the fall, either not start back up on time or we start on time and then have to shut down, what that looks like as far as giving support to students and families again.
Okay. Thank you, Marcia. Bonnie, I don't think you've probably heard anything on the safety front on the CARES Act stuff.
No, other than it could be used, like Marcia said, on startup needs. If we go back and we have to purchase, items for social distancing, more thermometers for temp checks, things like that. I think that guidance is going to be coming out, like Marcia said, next week.
And then I'll just add one more thing. Out of the money that the state received, they held some money back. And I know that those people that are serving on the priority committees with the State Department have asked the state to release what their intentions are at the state level for the CARES Act money. So that way we can be prepared as local districts to not have to duplicate services if it's something that the State Department is already going to provide for us in some fashion.
Right. At our district leadership meeting coming up on tomorrow, I've got a timeline on that, but like to say, it's the release, I think, is this next week. And then the application is through, I think, June 15th or so. And then the awarding of the CARES Act on the education side is June 30th or thereabouts. There's a pretty quick turnaround with the feds on this particular, the CARES Act money. And so we will see what that money holds. But there again, could we use some for a bus? I don't know that. And we'll have to look at that as a district and see where the need is at. But again, your guidance on that federal money is you supplement, you don't supplant. You don't, replace that. You just don't do that. You supplement is what you do. But that brings me back to, Mr. Chairman, if you wanted to say, when we get back to we're sending this to the committee or sending whatever to the commission, then you're gonna come back to the table again, whenever after their budget committee meets, and you come back and say, okay, we need to meet at this particular date to get to the, what we know is the nitty gritty, what I call the nitty gritty budget. And that's where the cuts will come, and that's where that gives you about a week, probably a week and a half to whenever they're going to meet again to get a 68.5 inch, a 68.5 budget ready to roll.
That's what they're gonna give us, if we're lucky. That's what they're gonna give us.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Phil.
We're, spending a lot of time here. And I don't see a big issue with sending them a 75 cents. I guess we gotta try, but they're gonna give us 68.5, if not less. And it's gonna have to make the cuts.
And those cuts will come from various items. I know you've got, if you're looking at transportation or any additional cuts in those line items. And instruction, maintenance of the plant, we can go these by categories, and at that time, we'll send this, and then we'll start looking at those categories that we can look at. But one of the things I want to go back to something that Mr. Sanders said about, well, we looked at there on the west side deal. I want to keep the 20,000 in there for the architect fees, because if we go on and all and do these other roofs, then if we do that with him, those fees are paid, and you don't have to take any of that out of the whatever's left over. And he's got most of this work done on west side too. So there you go there.
All right. Yeah, it's on page 141, right underneath Lust. Pretty picture frame here. Passion. Passion is the heart's fervent hunger and willingness to experience.
I have a quick question for Marcia. Just to clarify, I think you've told us this at several meetings. Which subject is it that we have this year that is driving our cost up? Is it ELA?
It is the largest purchase in the 19 years that we will as a board have ever made. We were warned for a couple of years that this was coming, and that to be expecting it. The nice thing about it is that they will even allow us to, I guess, sort of finance it over 2 years. And they've delayed the math adoption again. So we don't have a major adoption purchase next year. However, our math adoption runs out at the end of 2021, and therefore we'll either, on yesterday I sort of explained it's a 6-year cycle, and so we purchase everything up front for the whole 6-year cycle. And that's what's making this ELA even more expensive, that we're purchasing the whole 6-year cycle of materials, teacher and student materials. And then, but thinking about what do we want to do at the end of next school year, the State Department is working on extending our contracts with the textbooks that we already have, which means though then there will be some cost because we only bought 6 years worth. We would have to, purchase 2 more years worth, extend our purchase. We actually did that with some of our ELA because it was postponed for a year, and but because we piloted some EL materials last year, we didn't have to extend the online resources, except for we bought just a couple of sites, and then our coaches worked with that to get all the materials and things that the teachers needed. So we didn't have a full subscription for everybody this year. So yeah, you're right. In all these years, it's a big budget item, and we'll probably have to. Douglas is working with me. Stacy and I worked a little bit on K5 today. Stephanie and I have some things to work on for next week for the 6-12. The 6-8 still is working on having some presentations, so we're still working on that.
something
Anybody else got anything they want to talk about?
that sometimes get very, and,
I'll go ahead and add, you know, last year, I will say social studies could have been a big year, but our high school social studies teachers really worked with us to, you know, just buy class sets and digital versions. So that wasn't, I know that's last year, so that doesn't impact this year's budget. I was very appreciative that they worked with us last year to do that. We knew coming in that ELA would be a big year.
You want some other news, Mr. Chairman, or not at this point? Mr. Kofer, I will turn it over to you to talk about technology, and there is some not necessarily some bad news, but Mr. Kofer has a presentation in regarding technology that he'd like to talk to the board about.
Yeah, I feel like I need to put some information out here before we before technology gets cut.
Be right back. Wait,
I'll wait for Mr. Curtis to get back. Let's see, I need to get that screen shared, don't I? Can everybody see that PowerPoint slide?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, I'm going to pause here for Mr. Curtis to get back in.
Brian, I think I already know where you're going with this. I see that year 2004 right there. I know what that means.
Do you?
I do know what that means. I know exactly what that means.
That was the year I started working here.
I know that. There was a lot of changes made then. I know that.
Which one are you?
I'm the dog.
I figured you were the dog. If you weren't going to be the dog, one, that's okay.
Well, in this case, the dog is the smartest one.
So anyway, I've got about 12 slides. I'll try to go through them quickly. I know there's a lot more to consider than just technology, but I do want to say my piece before anything happens to the program. Back in 2004 was when I started working for Cannon County Schools. I actually made a call ahead before I accepted the job, and I called E&A and talked to a guy that's been there for a long time, Mark Smith. I said, Mark, what am I looking at here in Cannon County? Said, what's going on with their technology program? He said, well, Brian, I hate to tell you this, but they're one of the worst in the state. And then he paused for a second. He said, no, I take that back. They are the worst in the state. They are at the bottom. So, and then he said, well, but they could really use you if you want to go out there. So what happened is I took the job, but the program had some challenges. Mentioned that. bandwidth was so small, I had to go to the Commissioner of Education to beg for more bandwidth. And that was back when they were a little more benevolent with helping the school's internet. And they did give us some more bandwidth at the time. There was no network management, no network infrastructure, viruses at every school, no standardization, automation, organization, or best practices, no computer replacement plan. Basic desktop software was installed on less than 10% of the computers. And the problems with the technology program was acknowledged internally by teachers, administrators, the Board of Ed, the director of schools, as one of the biggest issues facing the school system. So, one of the big highlights or shocking things is how much it took to stand up the program that first year. And that is a real number, that more than $1 million was spent the first year here to get the technology program back on its feet. Within 2 to 3 years, we had implemented enterprise class management, automation, computer software imaging, library automation, food service automation, backup systems, real-time monitoring, work order systems, emergency notifications. We were among the first in the state to roll out several of these systems. 2007, Cannon County program was recognized by many of the schools in the area as one of the top programs in the state. There were so many calls I got from different programs saying, what is going on in Cannon County? So the name keeps coming up, says, Cannon County's doing this, why can't we do this? They're doing that, why can't we do that? Little old Cannon County, they got this off the ground, they got that off the ground. We got some recognition that we felt pretty good about. By 2008, our computer fleet, all our computers were we didn't have any computers older than 4 years old, so our replacement plan was fully implemented. In 2011, we were the first system in the state to roll out wireless access points in every classroom in the district. In 2013, we were one of the first school systems in the state to implement a one-to-one Chromebook program for the high school students. Our system at a glance, we have 111 network switches deployed throughout, 208 wireless access points, 68 miles of copper network cabling, 44 miles of fiber optic cabling, 1,021 computer workstations, 1,655 Chromebooks, although we have about 500 that are at near end of life. We have 63 servers. So what am I trying to say with all this rehash? Some of you may remember the old Virginia Slims. You've come a long way, baby. And we have.
Go back a ways to find that one, Brian.
Yeah, but they used it for
A long
over
time.
a decade. We have a new challenge thanks to Microsoft that this hasn't even been brought up with anybody outside our department. But the Windows 10 operating system, some people may have noticed, starting out it ran pretty good, but after updates were applied, their machines started getting slower and slower. It's become a resource hog, and it's required significantly more memory than when it was originally released. It's created a noticeable performance lag on our computers, even ones as new as 3 years old. Significantly worse for older computers. We're trying to address this problem by rolling out upgrade kits, increasing memory or doubling memory from 4 to 8 gig, We also found that replacing the legacy spinning drives with solid state drives provides a substantial boost. This upgrade typically is projected to extend the life of the computer by 2 to 3 years. Now, our computer replacement plan, I mentioned before we were on a 4-year plan, but I want to, over time, we found that we weren't able to keep all of our computers on a replacement plan. So we made 2 distinct classifications. One we call mission critical computers, which are teacher administrator computers, lab computers, high priority workstations. These are required for carrying out instruction and administration. And the second class computers we call supplemental. These are the extra student machines, typically 1 to 5 in a regular classroom, above and beyond the teacher workstation. Some teachers do an excellent job with these extra computers, but we found some teachers didn't use them so much. So we made that distinction, mission critical and supplemental. Anyway, the 4-year plan has evolved into 5 years, and which is still pretty good, and even 6 years is possible. So just real quickly here, I'm getting closer to the end. The condition of our fleet, we have Optiplex 755s and 760s. If you look at the age of these machines, they're 11 and 12-year-old machines. We don't consider them mission critical. They are the supplemental category, and they represent about 15% of our fleet. They're pretty much useless. They're boat anchors, they're props. I don't know what else to call them. Their upgrades will not help us. We just, they really need to be pulled from the classroom. There's nothing else we can do with those. And then the next 2 models, 780s and 790s, if we upgrade these, they're on the border. Wouldn't use them for mission critical, but they could still be deployed to help out with the supplemental computers. There's 127 of those. The next 2 series, 3010s and 3020s, if we upgrade those, they can be used for mission critical. But if you look at the age now, they're already 6 and 7-year-old computers. And we're talking about a group that's over 400. So we're kind of replicating the bus scenario where you're approaching a time where you're going to have to buy a ton of computers at one time. We're trying to stay away from that. Next class, 3040s, 3050s, 262 of those. They really should be upgraded within a year to get over that Microsoft hurdle. And then we have the last 2 models, 74 of them, no issues. So that's the condition of our fleet. Now here's our budget history, and you can see there's not been a lot of change. This is our core technology budget starting or from year 2005 to the current year. It's been consistently 200,000, and then we had a 5% bump up in 2014. And this is the big question mark for next year. Now the next slide is what are we facing as a technology department for next year's budget. Well, these, right off the bat, we have 94 of the 3010 computers that need to be replaced. And those, remember, those are 7-year-old computers. And the cost of that is close to $70,000. We have, if we upgrade these after we pull them, put them into our refurb program, we could deploy them for supplemental needs. We have a E-rate project that we've been approved for our network infrastructure, which we definitely want to take advantage of because we're paying 20 cents on the dollar for our network equipment. So that's this line item right here. And we need to replace our head-end switch at the central office. That's a $6,000 hit. We need fiber modules. There's $9,000 for that. We need to upgrade our 3020 computers, our 3040, 3050s. We're looking at 27,000, 22,000 hit. Our file system servers. These are the servers that they hold all the files for all the teachers and administrators in the school system. These servers are now over 6 years old and they're due for replacement. That's a $10,000 hit. Software subscription renewals. These are resources. For example, OdysseyWare at the high school, that's a $15,000 annual hit. There's quite a few more beyond that. I won't go into all of those, but that's a recurring expense. These last few on this category, those represent actual expenditures for this budget year. So what core budget do we need for next year? We actually need 291,000. What have we been getting? We've been getting 210,000. So before you do anything to our budget, we're already projected a shortfall of $81,000 that we've got to deal with somehow, somewhere. And it's going to have to come out of these categories that are desperately needed. Two other categories you might as well not spend any time on unless you're willing to cut it, and that's the Chromebook program. It needs 50,000 to stay afloat. That's at the high school. And we sort of need our internet program district-wide, so that neither one of these can be reduced without killing the program. So that's what we're looking at.
Hey, Brian, in the numbers you've presented there for us, does that include any salary components?
No, it does not.
Okay.
This is pretty much all equipment.
Okay.
Hardware, software.
What line item is Brian saying?
72250 education technology.
$72250 and also 71100.
Pretty good presentation.
Brian, I appreciate what you've done. You know me in my position. I'm pretty well. I'm not saying I'm well versed. I know you're more well versed than I am. You're director of technology, but I know what kind of work you've done. I've seen what you've done. I've worked with you for a long time. I don't know if any other board members know, but I worked there for several years. I believe it's from 05 to 07, I believe. And those guys do a good job. And I have a pretty good understanding of what they need to operate. I'm going to be honest. I'm not trying to bring up personal things, but I wished I was Michael Medford today. I mean, I wished I still worked there. I did. And if money had worked out for me, I would have stayed, but it didn't. I couldn't afford to stay, but I wished I was still there to this day. But I appreciate what you guys do. And that's been a good presentation, and we'll do what we can for you. I know that we're at a crossfire right now. I know David can agree with me on that. So can Mr. Curtis. We've got people coming at us from every angle. But I appreciate what you guys do. I've been there and done that, part of that anyway.
Thank you.
Is it state law that board members have to be paid?
I can ask the board attorney that and see, but we can look at that if you, but I do believe that it is state law that board members have to be paid. Yes. Douglas, you've been here a long time. Isn't there a state statute that board members have to be paid a stipend? Is that correct?
I don't know that. I just know they've been paid ever since I've been here.
How many checks have you donated, David, so far?
All of them that I know of, unless my wife catch one that I wouldn't.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
She might have cashed a couple, I don't know.
Yeah, but it wasn't many probably.
The Board of Education is, that's funny, $7,200 of the whole thing.
Well, that's board and committee members' fees. That's going to TSBA, I'm sure. Part of that is,
Already added that up. That's what we make pretty much, plus what you make, David. So I know you're chairman, which I know that's, but that's.
I'll trade places with you, Travis.
Do what?
I'll trade places with you right now. We can make it official. We can vote on it.
It's not on the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you, but from what I could find out, I went through, did some crunching on some numbers and did some math and stuff. And I think that's, from what I've understood, that's what we all draw on a check, you and all the rest of us combined. I think that's all that is. I'm pretty sure on that.
TSBA's, dues and memberships is what that is. So, Douglas, line 191 under Board of Education, that's $7,200. That's what board members are paid, correct? We'll go to the guru.
Whatever the first line item is, I'm not at that point right now.
Okay, 7,200 is on line number
191. Yes, that's where they're paid. 191.
Okay, 191. This is what you're paid. Then our membership with TSBA and $7,000 legal services, about 75 from Mr. Jennings. The travel there under the board is basically for the TSBA convention. And if you were to go to the fall meeting, that would be in mileage or whatever was there. So.
And travel to your board academies or whatever you go to keep current.
One thing that, since we're here on this line item, if you'll turn to the next page, page 5 of 8, I think this needs to be brought out here in a public forum. Everybody, if you would turn to that line item 510, this is under 72310, the Board of Ed, line number 510. That's about the 4th line down, I think, if my spectacles are working correctly. Do you see that where it says Trustees Commission? This is on page 5 of 8. And the 4th line down, Trustees Commission. Douglas, would you enlighten us on that $73,000 figure there, please?
That's what the trustee takes from us for handling our money.
I brought that up 4 or 5 times.
And we get no.
Basically, she makes about that same amount. The Board of Ed pays for the trustee. So the next time the commission knocks us upside the head or something, I'm saying, well, hey, we pay for the trustee.
They also cabbage our interest of all the money that we have.
That is correct, sir.
I brought that up too, but it fell on deaf ears, I reckon.
Well, the only thing I think that could change is through a state statute, and that is probably impossible to do because of the lobbying that the counties have there. It's pretty tough to swallow.
This 73,000 though, is that a state requirement that we do that?
Douglas, that is a state requirement, correct?
I think you're right, because I have questioned. I think we could find a banker for a lot less than $73,000 to handle our money.
Yes, we've asked that before, guys. That's a state thing that trustee hits our bank account for it automatically. So you might as well.
I know, but what we're saying, Nathan, though, that I think others need to be reminded of that occasionally, you know.
There we go. Marcia's got it in the chat option for us, the TCA code that has it.
What does the trustee make a year?
We would have to look on that. I think 70 some odd $1,000 is what the trustee does make every year. I nearly know that to be.
I just find it amusing. I'm sorry, guys. I go back over here.
$4 a day for our services, Jaden. $4 a day is what we get paid. What minimum that we have to get paid.
That's the minimum we have to get paid. We have to be paid that. That's state requirement.
That's what it looks like to me. I mean, I may not be reading that right. That's what it looks like. I mean, the county commission gets paid what, $20 every meeting, I think, something like that. I think Commissioner Ashford told me she draws about $18 a meeting, something like that. It's a joke.
Well, I was going to volunteer my services for free. I think I already have.
I know what you mean there.
Guys, we got to send them something. This current budget, the one here we're asking for was 75 cents with no educational cuts whatsoever, will not pass the state. We're shortfall here about $1 million. And that's not a joke. There it is on paper. You can send it to them. We're wasting our time. They're going to give us 68.5 if we're lucky. And it's going to affect education. And I can't help it. That's what you're looking at. That's what we've got. I would love to keep every single classroom teacher that I could, but I don't see a way out of it. It's a definite. There it is in black and white. So you guys can vote on, or we can try to vote on something to send them, but I'm pretty sure on what we're going to get. And it's going to be devastational.
Well, Javen, you know, you said last time we sent them a budget, right?
I know exactly what happened.
Yeah. I mean, I know I'm agreeing with you. I mean, I'm on the same page you're on, but I mean, you know,
I don't care at all to ask, but all you're doing is prolonging the torture because they're going to send it
exactly.
back.
Exactly.
I know what you mean.
This is not balanced, and we don't even have a 68.5 balanced when they do pass it. When they do pass that, guys, we need at least $1 million left in the budget. I'd like to have $1.5 million, and that's going to be devastational. I'm just telling everybody that. It's here. It's factual.
You're right.
There it is. There's no way around it.
You're right.
They're not going to give it to us, and we're going to have to cut stuff. I don't want to take away from the classroom, but we don't have a choice.
Nope.
I
agree with everything Mr. Fan just said. I think the obvious thing to do is, you know, figure out what number we want to send to the commissioner and then go from there. Sorry to cut you off, Javen.
You're fine. I don't know what to say or what to do, but I will tell y'all that 3 years ago, I sat in this very spot and said that this was coming. And you are all here. You all remember it. I made a stink about it 2 or 3 times. And here we are. I'm open for a motion to send them something, whatever you guys want to do. But like I told you before, you're just prolonging the agony.
David, Commissioner or Chairman Fan, I don't think we need to prolong it. Unlike you, I mean, we're going to be forced into having to make some cuts we don't want to make. You know, I mean, I know some people may look at this as if we're the bad guys, but I mean, we just talked about what compensation we were getting, which is pretty much nothing. We're doing this. We're volunteering to do this. I mean, that's just it. Because we care. I mean, we wouldn't be here right now if we didn't care. I mean, that's the bottom line. And you know, we're gonna have to cut some spots we don't want to have to cut. We're gonna have to make decisive decisions. And you know, we ran for these positions. We understood that was gonna be a part of the job, and that's gonna be what we're gonna be doing here. So you know, we don't want to prolong this longer than we have to. And I'm like you, we have to be realistic about what we're looking at here. I'm on the same page you guys are on here.
Quick question, thinking ahead about the cuts, does this particular budget include any growth positions, Mr. Curtis?
It does not.
Does not. Okay, thanks.
I asked him to prepare something to try to leave all the
Okay.
class.
This
Yep.
was done as of this year's budget, from this last year's budget, Ms. Sanders. And there's, you know, no growth positions pretty well in there at all. When we get down to what I call the nitty gritty budget, then we can look at that. And if we want to put one or two in there, depending on our numbers, you have, we did send you the latest numbers. I hope y'all looked at that. I will probably, depending on what happens here this evening, I will probably go back and put another column right there on each school about the teacher that they had in FY20 and FY21 on what they could possibly have in each one of those classrooms. You can look in the enrollment and the probable enrollment that they could have there. This does not include any kind of, I mean, things that are being done. You know, Woodland is a place that's really growing and building of houses there. I don't want to rehash that from last night, but what I gave you on the school enrollment, we can go back and revise that and put columns for teachers about number of teachers that are needed there. And then again, as stated last evening, and we did a little bit of research on that. The splits are not advisable at all, but multi-age classrooms are. So if you've got enough that you can combine two classes, that can happen. But we need to sit down and look at that long and hard, and probably, you know, look at every individual school and see what your desire is to do that. Because to get $1 million out of this budget, as you know, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, you're looking at your biggest line item there, your biggest category is total regular instruction program. And that's the biggest item in that. I know Mr. Kofer has $100,000 of that, but you know, this million is $8.5 million out of a $16 million budget. So over half of your budget comes out of that instruction, which it should, and that does. But I get knocked upside the head every time I go by particular commissioners there that were 40 teachers over. And so that's one of the things that, you know, we have to look at that. The next budget meeting by the commission is May 28th at 6 p.m.
I've got a recommendation. I say that we send them the 75-cent budget, and Mr. Curtis and Douglas will have to figure out how many jobs that we lose for this one to balance. And we send them a 68.5-cent budget, and we show them how many jobs for teachers that'll have to be cut for that budget to balance. I'd like to leave about $1.5 million in the budget so that we'll have a safe zone to fall back on if we need something. And past state code, this one won't get close to make it to the comptroller's office. It won't get close. That's my recommendation.
I'm with you, Javen. I make a motion.
Motion's been made. Do we have a second? I'll second it.
All right, would you repeat your motion, Mr. Turney or Mr. Fan?
I want to send them a 75-cent budget. Y'all figure out a way to leave $1.5 million in the budget and show them how many jobs will be cut,
Yes.
and then send them a 68.5.
Okay, so let me get that straight. Douglas, you might want to chime in here on that. If that will fly, to send a 75-cent budget. So send this one over and then start preparation on a 68.5 and a 75. Immediately after we send this one over, go ahead and start preparation on, and you'll probably have to either have another recessed meeting or probably another recess meeting would be what you probably want to do. And then their next budget meeting, I just got a text, is May 28th at 6 p.m. is their next budget meeting for the commission. I mean, for the budget commission. Budget committee of the commission is what I should say.
When you tell us how many positions we're going to have to cut, somebody's going to have to say which positions we cut, because some positions have a lot more pay attached to them than others. So I wouldn't be able to say, well, okay, we're going to cut 15 positions, that'll do it. You got to tell me which 15 or whatever it is, because hardly, and I would assume you'd have to do it with non-tenured people. I don't know. That's up to you. It's not saying if we cut 15 positions or whatever it is, this will do it. We got to decide which positions to cut. Somebody has to.
Everybody's quiet. Nathan, Bruce.
I mean, Douglas is right. We've got to give him and Mr. Curtis some direction. I work
for you.
Well, when like Chairman was saying, if you send that over right now, then that's going to be our responsibility in the meantime to discuss cuts we're going to have to make. Is that correct? And am I understanding that correctly here? I mean, we're going to send what we want, what we feel like we need, but we're realistic in what we think we're going to get at this point.
Right. About $1.24.
Right. Yes, we need $1.24, Travis, but I don't think the commission is going to go from the 68 to $1.24.
We all know that. I mean, that's a given at this point. But I think we're trying to do our diligence here, though. Am I on the same page you're on, Chairman? You know, we're trying to display our diligence. You know, there's only so much we can do as these men sitting around this table here. I mean, you know, we don't have control over part of this process, and that's what goes on over across the street. We don't have any control over that.
Can I ask Douglas a question, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
Douglas, would you tell the commission, tell the board what we thought about what we were going to send to the commission at that later point about recessing this meeting perhaps to another date for that preparation time?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Remember we talked about this afternoon about the board would have to recess and get another budget. But now the budget committee is not going to act until the 28th or meet until the 28th again. I was hoping that's going to meet next week, but they're not. So the 28th is when they're going to meet at 6:30 or 6 p.m., excuse me.
But
So
you're supposed to send them a budget by the 15th, the way I understand
correct.
it.
That's correct. But we sent them the 75 and said, we know that could the board come back and meet and then have them another budget ready before their next budget committee meeting on the 28th. That's my question.
I would guess you could. I don't know that.
We'll send them the 75 and then turn right around and then you're going to do the cuts or whatever and another 68 and a half and a 75. It gives you that much time to give us time to, to research this and prepare for this. And I'll get principals involved and others involved too, of supervisors to look at, and they've already told you this is their bare, you all saw Mr. Cofer's presentation. And most other supervisors, we have several supervisors here on the broadcast today too that can tell you that they cut about as much as they can cut. And so that leads to the only other line, and that is the big line then of instruction.
If you send this budget, I would make a suggestion that you move all the committed and, what's the other word? Designated restricted reserves, the maximum amount into your unrestricted fund balance to clear that negative 58,819. I don't know what that amount would be. I would have to find out exactly what our career ladder reserve is. That's the one we can't touch, but we could move everything else into that. It wouldn't be over, let's see, a couple of 100,000 maybe, what we could move. But I think that ought to be part of your motion if you're going to send this budget.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded.
I need to revise that to Douglas's comments.
Yes.
Okay, Douglas, repeat that for me for the motion, or
Whatever your motion is, and just add to it and move the maximum amount from restricted and committed reserves into undesignated fund balance
okay, move the maximum amount
available
Go on, keep on going.
from committed and restricted reserves to undesignated fund balance. Now, it's not going to fix everything, but I think it'll may clear up that negative.
Okay. Available from committed, and what was the other word? Committed and
Restricted.
restricted. That's the word I was looking for. And restricted lines.
Yes.
And restricted lines to where?
To undesignated fund balance.
All right, thank you. Let me read back the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Motion made by Mr. Turney, seconded by Mr. Fan, to send the 0.75 budget to the County Budget Committee, but in parentheses, make preparations to send a 0.75 budget with cuts and a 0.685 budget with cuts. Secondary, number 2, to move the maximum amount available from committed and restricted lines to undesignated fund balance.
Can we do that?
Say again, sir?
Can we do that? Restricted funds? Can we pull
Douglas, the question is, can we move that? I think we can.
I think you can.
I think we can move it in between, like Douglas is saying. I don't think we can move it out into our expenditure column, if you will, or category. Is that somewhat right, Douglas? Like,
I think
take
so.
up a deficit in instruction or salary or transportation, but we can move it within those same reserve categories.
I think that's right.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure that we can. Before we-
We'll make sure that we can, Douglas. We'll talk to, can you talk to Mary Ann tomorrow
I'll
about
talk to
that?
Brian Runyon tomorrow.
Brian Runyon, Brian is back, guys. He had a very near death situation in his life, and Brian is now back with us, so he's doing quite well. So Brian is back on the duty. So
Stipulation in there if it's allowed.
okay, yes, sir. If allowable.
Yeah,
All right, I've added that. You read it back again or not?
I'm good.
Okay? Motion been made, and I've read the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Call the roll.
Mr. Daniel,
Aye.
Mr. Sanders,
Aye.
Mr. Turney,
Aye.
Chairman Fan.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, 4 ayes, no nays.
If y'all wanna know what it feels like to be backed up in a corner, this is what it feels like.
I don't like it.
Thank you.
You said it. Thanks, everybody, for attending.
Thank you.
You want to
Thank you,
adjourn, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest before we adjourn, you want to call a special called meeting, but that will apply, those situations will apply to do a special call.
So we can vote on the 68.5.
With cuts. But you can adjourn the meeting and do a special call meeting before the budget committee meets on the 28th. You're going to send them something according to law. Then you're going to work within the next 2 weeks to try to do something. You could have another meeting right before, that Tuesday night, the 26th. I wouldn't do it on the Memorial Day. Please don't do that, Mr. Chairman. But the 26th, you could do that, to have that to send to them the 28th with a revised one.
What is it, 26th?
26th on Tuesday night.
Everybody okay with that? Can you make that work? 26th?
Can we can recess the recess meeting? I'm thinking we can recess the recess meeting, or you can just call a special
Just call
call.
a special call meeting.
Okay. And on that, you just have to give them the 48 hours, 48 hours, and we can go ahead, if you want me to go ahead and do that, we can do that week of the 18th. I'll put May on the week of the 18th.
Will that work for everybody?
When's that?
26th?
I'm coming back from out of town that day. It's gonna be cutting it close for me. I'm gonna do the best I can, but I'm gonna be out of town. I'm gonna be heading back. I don't know what time I'll be back.
28th at 6 o'clock.
The 26th.
Yeah, the 26th is when we're talking about.
Special call budget meeting.
I'm good for the 26th.
That's the only item on the agenda is voting on the budget.
And
I'll start working on that, and I'll get that out, and we'll put that in the paper and do whatever we need to do, and we're good. I mean, paper comes out on Tuesday, so we could go ahead and do that. I could do that early next week and have that already done, Mr. Chairman, or I can work on it this week. It don't matter.
If I'm not back on the 26th, I could probably arrange to get on the phone anyway. I may be on the road, but I can get on there.
Is that going to be a workshop or an actual meeting?
Special call meeting for the adoption of the 68-cent and 75-cent budget.
Okay, thanks.
And if you wanted to do a special workshop, I mean, I'm sure you could call a special workshop, Mr. Chairman, anytime.
Do y'all think we need a workshop? I think you can call us.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you want Douglas to work on that, and I'll get with principals too. They will not be very receptive to this news, Mr. Chairman, but I think they know. I think they know it. I've tried to prepare them. I've tried to prepare them with every DLM we've done the last little bit, and you heard from principals last evening, so we know it's coming.
When will they set our budget? Set it. What meeting do they have to set it?
You would have to ask the budget committee that they were asked by the commission on their meeting on the 7th, last Thursday night, to go back and to make the budget even more leaner. I can call the chairman of the budget committee and can ask when that can be done, and when they will have to submit it to the full commission.
I don't like I don't want to make any more cuts than I absolutely have to, and I don't know what they're going to give us till they vote on it.
Well, one of the things too, after the 15th, on May the 15th, this is what's crazy. is our May BEP estimate will be back. And I you know, by what Ms. Black and I have done and looked at that, we will be up with BEP by about 50 students, we believe. Correct, Lisa?
That is correct. If all of our numbers are right. And if they're not, they're gonna have to explain to us why.
When will that be back?
May 15th, this
May
Friday.
15th.
Okay, that might give us a little more to figure on.
Well, every little bit helps, and that'll be, y'all figured it up how much that was gonna be, 50 more students was gonna be,
350,000.
300 and something $1,000. That could, that could be great help. Positions.
All right.
I need is there a motion to adjourn? I don't have that down, sir.
No, but we're gonna call it. Do we need to vote on that meeting?
You can, if you'd like to call a special call meeting.
Yeah. Do I have a motion for that meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Motion's been
Second
made.
motion.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Motion made to call a special, to have a special called meeting, and I'm trying to get this down as I go. Special call meeting for Tuesday, May the 26th, 2020, 6:30 PM. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Daniel, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Turney, Chairman Fan. Mr. Chairman, 4 ayes, no nays.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion's been made. We're done. Thank y'all.
Thank you, guys, gals.
Thanks.
Appreciate everybody.
Thank you.